Racially integrating the Minneapolis Police Department was a long-fought battle.
I think some folks were afraid you're going to open the door up and you're going to bring in subpar people.
With many heroes along the way.
Inspector Ray Presley, who's no longer with us.
Colson became legendary.
Monty Manning, we called him Pops.
But as the department continues to work to increase diversity among its rank and file,
it not only helps our job and what we do, but I also think that it helps build those relationships in the communities.
We must look at where it all began and the path followed to get here. It was the late 1800s. The Minneapolis Police Department served a population of about 200,000, with a force of 200 men. Around that time, there was sometimes one African-American officer, and never more than 2 on the force at a time.
For the first 75 of the first 100 years, they were invisible. You know, they were there. They were necessary to deal with the colored problem, if you will, patrol the colored area.
The first documented black officer was Mac Brady, a Civil War veteran who joined the force as a patrolman in 1881. Newspapers from the early 1900s mentioned Fred Connors, who was assigned to be a guard for Mayor Ames and went on to become a professional wrestler, and Detective James Harding, who was later dismissed from the MPD on grounds of physical and moral deficiency. The longest-serving black officer of the time was Henry G. Thompson, who started on the force in 1901 and served for 27 years, working a beat on the corner of Franklin and Cedar Avenue. Records show some black officers were promoted to detective or sergeant, but the ranks seemed to exist in name only.
Up until probably maybe the 1930s, African American or Negro officers were not allowed to arrest white citizens. They would have to call for a white officer.
Through the middle of the century, the community continued to call for more diversity, but the number of black officers on the force was never more than 3 at a time. They weren't allowed to be partnered with white officers and were limited to beats in black neighborhoods or riding on the arrest wagon, also known as the Black Mariah.
Black Mariah was the drunk patrol wagon. That's where you went to pick up the derelicts and the drunks and et cetera. And so the 2 Negro officers were always assigned to that.
Little progress had been made when Raymond Presley joined the force in 1962. At the time, he was one of a half-dozen black officers.
Every time my father left the house, he left with a purpose. His purpose was to make life easier for other people and to make sure everyone was okay.
But things were far from easy for him and other black officers.
It took a while for them to realize he wasn't going anywhere. You know, and sometimes I think they tried to make it rough. Sometimes when he called for backup, he wouldn't get it.
Oftentimes, just getting the job was a challenge. Monty Manning applied numerous times before he was hired in 1967.
He was a veteran of the Korean War, and he was a Marine. And it took him so long to get on the police department because they said he was too short.
And I remember the day vividly that he came in. He ran in the house and said, you know, there was a gentleman who came up to him and told him that they had altered the measuring tool to measure. And he was 5'10", and I think it was a requirement to be 5'10", but they had told him once again that he was too short.
But he eventually got on. He never gave up, you know, so you have to respect that.
For Riley Gilchrist, it was his glasses, something that hadn't stopped white officers from joining the force.
At the time, they told him he couldn't be on because he couldn't see, even though you could wear glasses. And they tried to say he couldn't be on the department for that. And he did have to fight and sue to get on the police department.
Through adversity and hardship, they continued to work to make the department and community better and encouraged young African Americans to join the force, mentoring them and paving the way.
The barriers for which he overcame to be such a popular man and be such a great man, in my opinion. Because what he did not only affect people of color in getting in the police department or getting into public service, period, but it crossed all barrier lines.
Despite black officers having a harder time advancing, Raymond Presley went on to become the first modern-day black lieutenant in the department and first black inspector.
He cared about people. He cared about society. He wanted to make things better.
He told me something that stuck with me quite a while, and it rang true. He said, he says, you can't do what the white cops do. I realized right away that some cops would treat me differently because of what I am as opposed to who I am.
I think a lot of the lessons learned and certainly the nuggets of knowledge that they transpired onto us was very helpful in terms of navigating our way to being the best we could in terms of being peace officers here with the Minneapolis Police Department.
It was the 1970s when the department first got serious about diversifying.
They had a thing in the paper. They were going to hire women, and they definitely would love to hire blacks. Yeah, they wanted everything to make it so that Minneapolis looked like it was going off into the future kind of thing. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll give it a shot.
In 1975, Dolores Dunn, then Dolores McKinney, and 2 others became the first women to be sworn officers. She says many people welcomed her on the force, but others were less excited about the efforts to diversify.
Yeah, because I mean, there were some nasty things that went on, like they put a dead rat in my locker. And which isn't very funny, seeing as how that's, my clothes were hanging, my uniform's in there. But, I just, acted like, well, I don't see what they're doing. I don't hear what they're saying and that kind of stuff. I said, no, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it.
On our shift, they would have meetings that they'd sometimes forget to ask us to join in, which was fine. That was up to them.
Throughout history, at the same time that black officers were battling racism from within the department, many faced added scrutiny and often hostility and resentment from the black community, something they continue to deal with today.
There certainly has been a narrative, long before I joined the police department in 1989, that there were those in the community where their reception of treatment by Minneapolis police officers was not that kind. And so, because of that, there were going to be those who were going to be looking upon me with certainly more scrutiny in terms of how I was going to treat them.
We have to not only prove ourselves to the department and other officers that we're there to do the job, but also going back to our communities and show them that we care about the black community. And that's where it really becomes a fine line.
Some people think that you're a sellout. They think that you're gone to the other side. Some people expect you to give them special treatment, and some people expect you to give them worse treatment. But black officers have a harder time, I have to say.
You'd say it would hurt when people would say, like you're an Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside, and you're Uncle Tom for being in the police car. He would tell people that, I can do much more for you on the inside of this squad than I can do on the outside of this squad.
Especially for some of the young folks that are out there that are working now. They get called all kinds of names because of what they do. And I've heard the names, heard them many, many times over the course of my career, and that weighs on a person.
From the 80s to the 90s, the number of black officers grew to 60, thanks in part to the newly created cadet program. But a controversial investigation around that time caused more division.
From what I understand, the way it got started was that somebody had phoned in to a tip line that one officer was either using or dealing. And so I don't know how it got started, but it blew up to a point that it was like they were following the black officers around.
So they did a year surveillance on us. And they tried to bring us all and get us charged with various crimes, which were all crap.
This got to the point where we had people arrested, put in the backseat of squad cars, at gunpoint, in uniform. Larry Wakefield comes to mind, who thought he was pulling up on a situation trying to help out his fellow officers, and it turns out he's the one that's getting arrested.
It left a bad taste in my mouth because I enjoyed coming to work. I enjoyed every day that I put that uniform on. I felt good about going out and helping somebody. And for them to just think that you're doing something wrong and then treat you like, you're a common criminal in front, in front of people. That's when it started going downhill for me. Mm-hmm.
They pegged us as drug dealers, and that kind of stayed with me for a couple of years until I was able to move into I went to a different unit and worked out some surveillance, and all some people knew I knew nothing about drugs, and so it took me a while to build my reputation back up off of false allegations. So
After that investigation, there was more of an effort to understand black officers. The department started participating in community forums about race. But even as overt discrimination continued to fade, black officers felt they were still being passed over for promotions and their successes questioned.
And it goes back to, you know, what my dad told me about having to do it twice as good as the next person, because you're always going to be judged by the things that you do. Even if you do it exemplary, then you have to make sure it's double exemplary, because people are going to find fault with it one way or the other.
A lot of people think, well, he didn't deserve that, you know, he got it because, or she got it because. And, you know, I placed #1 on the lieutenant's exam, but people thought that some kind of that was given to me. You know, I didn't just achieve that. It was made easier for me for some reason, where I just flat studied hard and did well. Years after I was on the department, people thought I was coached to pass the entrance exam. I didn't get any coaching. I just took the same test they did, and I just made it. But people actually told me, well, you had this and you had that, didn't you? Well, no. But there's that thought out there that anything that a person like me achieved was probably given to me, or I was kind of helped out.
Bill Jones went on to become the department's first black deputy chief in 1994. That position was also held by Valerie Worster and now Madera Arredondo. Things got better and sometimes worse under different administrations, but black officers continued to push for change from within.
They used to give a description of a black male, in roll call, they would say, we're looking for a Negro male, now I'm talking 90s, nappy hair. We're just like, what the hell is this all about, you know? We challenged our supervisors about saying that. We got them in check, but it was happening department-wide. And the chief found out about that, and he put out an order. You will not refer to a black person as the Negro anymore, you know, as black or African American, and that's what it's going to be referred to. And I don't want to even hear the term nappy head.
By 2003, the number of black officers dropped back under 50. That same year, a federal mediation agreement pushed the city to address the shortfall. Since then, progress has been made, with the number of black officers on the force in the 70s.
As time has gone on in this department, and as we have diversified our department, and also as our other enterprises have become more diverse and our elected officials have become more diverse and more in tune to the overall aspects of the city, and we're a very diverse city, things have gotten better.
Right now, at this point, I'm very satisfied with what's going on with the police department, with the whole diversity issue, and you know, we're not getting as many as people we'd like of color, but we're getting a couple.
But the work continues to increase diversity and better serve the community, and to give all of the African American officers that overcame so much the homage they did not receive at the time, but very much deserved.
Their service, their legacy, it's important that we don't forget that, and that we also try to carry ourselves and our conduct and our professionalism in a way that continues to hold their legacy in such high regard.